About an hour from now, the House Ethics Committee will meet to discuss whether to release its report into President-elect Trump's pick for Attorney General, Matt Gaetz. It's reportedly a damning document detailing Gaetz's alleged sexual misconduct and illicit drug use. Even Republican senators are saying they want to see that report before voting on his nominations. That includes the man you're seeing right now, North Dakota Senator Kevin Cramer. Thank you so much, Senator, for being here. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
As I mentioned, you have said that you want to see the House Ethics report on Gaetz. But my question is, even without it, you do already see people speaking out. An attorney for two women who say Gaetz paid them for sex also said they provided the committee with numerous photos of time they spent with Gaetz. One woman testified that she witnessed having sex with a minor. Again, without the report, just does that information give you pause?
Well, it would, then, if the FBI hadn't dropped the investigation, which tells me something about either the credibility of the testimony or not enough, or for some reason the FBI looked into all of this and decided not to move forward. That said, Dana, whether they release the report or not, it will certainly be reported. If not released, it'll be repeated by the Senate Judiciary Committee, because all those same witnesses, to your point, that are coming out publicly, and many more, and much more evidence, will be just as available to Senate Judiciary investigators. And of course, they have subpoena power. So I think we just have to let this process play out, and we'll get to let this process play out. So one way or another, I think that the information, damning or not, will at least come to the committee members first, and then to the rest of the senators if in fact it comes to a vote on the floor.
That's really interesting. So you feel confident that that the staff on the Judiciary Committee, the Republican staff, in addition to the Democratic staff, will seek out this information and try to either confirm it or bring some of these people privately to talk to staff, even senators?
Well, I would certainly think so, because that is part of the job of vetting, particularly judicial nominees and attorneys general and important positions. Obviously, their job is to, in fact, do an investigation. The FBI does a background check, and if not the FBI, then the Judiciary Committee staff and investigators, and they have all of those same tools. So, yeah, I can't imagine that the committee would even have a markup without having done a thorough background check.
Let's talk for a minute about recess appointments. I know that you don't think it would be wise for Matt Gaetz in particular to be put in place as Attorney General via recess appointment without a vote from the United States Senate. Do you believe that there are enough Republicans who are with you who would buck Donald Trump if it came to that?
I don't know, but I suspect there are, and for very good reasons, Dan. I mean, first of all, the constitutionality of three co-equal branches, and one of those branches being split into two different bodies, is pretty profound, and it's pretty critical to this incredible experiment of the United States of America. That said, to your point, there is a constitutional mention of recess appointments. However, I don't know why you'd ever want to be a cabinet secretary or an AG that was confirmed through a recess appointment when clearly a majority of the Senate doesn't support you. I just think that's a setup for weakness. I don't think it's what they aspire to. President Trump, I've spent 6 hours with him yesterday. He never brought up the point or the issue of recess appointments. So there's both the ethical and the constitutional question of separation, but also the history of it. While there have been a lot of them, as you know, and there's been a lot of talk of it lately, they go back to the Bush and Obama eras. I don't know that there's been more than maybe one, if even that, that was actual cabinet secretary. So I think it's fine. We know there are over 1,200 positions that are confirmed by the Senate. So, but cabinet secretaries are special, and an AG is pretty high-ranking cabinet official.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that you're talking within the traditional contours of what the Senate usually does and what the Constitution says is not nothing, given the fact that Donald Trump, is a different kind of person, let's put it that way, and has promised to be a different kind of president. You said that you spent time with him yesterday. I know you've spoken to him. What is his message on Gaetz and on other nominees?
Well, to be honest, in the 6 hours we were together on the plane, and then several hours, at the launch, the issue of Matt Gaetz only came up in the context of I hope we can get this done. I hope this happens. He wasn't lobbying me or anybody else.
Did that surprise you?
It did a little bit, except that Donald Trump talks about a lot of things. He has a lot of information in his head. He's interested in lots of things, from golf to to entertainment to how good the food is. So it didn't shock me necessarily. He's got his mechanisms, in place. He's got JD here, as you pointed out today. He's got Matt himself, who's making calls, and all of that is part of the process, and that's good. And to your point about Donald Trump's a disruptor, nobody should be surprised that he's fulfilling that promise you're talking about to also appoint disruptors, and I applaud him for it. He's responding to the American people that elected him, and he's fulfilling that promise, and I'm eager to help him do it for the most part.
I do want to ask about the President-elect's pick for the Department of Defense, for Defense
Yes.
Secretary, because you're on the Armed Services Committee.
I am.
What makes him qualified to lead a department that employs millions of military and civilian employees?
Well, first of all, the beauty of our system is that the only requirement is that he gets appointed by the President and confirmed by the United States Senate, just like our only qualification for these jobs is to get more votes than the other person. That's why when Winston Churchill said the worst thing that could happen to the government of states is for it to fall into the hands of the experts, because expert knowledge is limited knowledge. What Pete brings is a warrior's heart. He's a warrior's warrior. And I think for a long time, and I've heard this from lots of troops, they get a little bit tired of the politicians in the Pentagon not really worrying about them. And Pete brings that advantage. And I think Donald Trump, it fits right into his mantra. Now, that said, the Pentagon's a big place and has lots of leaders. Some of them wear uniforms, some of them do not. And I am confident, and I'll be visiting with Pete about this, that he'll surround himself with good operational people who can do a lot of the day-to-day important stuff that needs to be done, while he remains the face of that, a great face, by the way, of a nation that believes in peace through strength. Pete exudes that. Avoid war by preventing war. And so I just think Pete's a really good face of the Pentagon.
Before I let you go, I want you to respond to something that Pete Hegseth said about the chairman of the Joint Chiefs.
So there's a chance to course correct it, but it would take the new Trump administration going after it really hard.
How would they correct it?
Well, first of all, you got to fire, you got to fire the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and you got to fire this. I mean, obviously, you're going to bring in a new Secretary of Defense, but any general that was involved, general, admiral, whatever, that was involved in any of the DEI woke shit, has got to go.
You, along with 82 senators, voted to confirm the current chair of the Joint Chiefs, who is only the second Black man to ever serve in that position. Do you agree? Should he be fired?
I do not agree, Dana, that he should be fired. I know CQ Brown pretty well. I've had plenty of disagreements with CQ Brown, but I've never seen him as promoting DEI in any way, shape, or form. He is, as you said, a Black general, and he does occasionally, and I appreciate, express his experience as a young Black officer, and I think it's rich, and I think it adds value, but he has never been anything but a great warrior. I mean, he has an incredible record as a combatant commander. He's soft-spoken, but he does carry a big stick, to quote my favorite president from North Dakota. So you just have, I just think Pete's wrong on that particular point. No, that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be some generals that are fired, but what I don't think is that we ought to go out and talk about a commission to go after all the woke generals. Generals, even with 4 stars, salute to a political leader. That's a really important part of our Constitution as well, that our military, even George Washington had to surrender his commission, right? So that's a rich part of our leadership. I would encourage Pete and the president to visit with CQ Brown and judge for yourself, ask him tough questions if you want, but I want our troops to look at our generals and our political leadership and go, I would like to be one of those guys. I want to aspire to that. We have a recruiting problem because of the DEI nonsense that the political class put out there. Remember, when Gina Ortiz was the Undersecretary of the Air Force, she drove generals out of the Air Force because they wouldn't read out loud to their troops her DEI statement. So we don't want to be the reverse of that. We want to be respectful of, I think, of the men and women that wear the uniform. And then if there's necessary, moves, make them. But I don't want to pre-signal anything.
Really interesting. Thank you so much for coming on, Senator. Appreciate
Always my
it.
pleasure. Thank you, Dana.